大家好，好啦，我哋做出街啦吓。
哇！只狗只狗你養啊？
唔係，阿玲姐你可以閂個咪同埋暫時閂一
好得意啊！
閂
只狗。
阿玲姐你
OK，
閂個咪先啦，閂個咪先。Okay, welcome everyone. Let's just stay quiet for a few minutes. Okay, so we are online now. I want to just first welcome both Venerable De Hong and Dr. Kwok. It's such a pleasure to have her back. She's been very busy traveling, I know. Watching her Facebook is just full of activity. But in any case, I believe she's talking about a very, very important topic today, which is how to process our grief and our law and when we lose an animal. Just a point of reference, most of you probably know of a fire in Hong Kong where 7 high rises, almost 2,000 families are involved. They're basically burned down because of human error. The idea is that they have a very incompetent government and they allowed the contractor to put up protection screens that are not fire retardant. So when something happens, then the 7 buildings got burned down completely. Now, of course, so far they have more than 100 deaths, but I cannot imagine how many animals are hurt and burned in that process. So I believe there's a lot of that going on. But given that, I would like to give the podium to Dr. Kwok right away. Let her introduce us to this very important topic. Thank you, Dr. Kwok.
Thank you, Dr. Mew. You can call me Joanne and I can call you Denny, I guess. And hi, everyone. Thank you for being with us this evening. And if we haven't met online before, my name is Joanne Kwoh Meisami. I'm commonly known as Dr. Kwoh at the place that I work at, which is University of the West in Rosemead, California, which is a part of Southeast LA. And my training, I'm a clinical psychologist by training, but I right now chair the Department of Psychology at the university, and I also am an associate professor of psychology. That means I teach some classes, mostly graduate and some undergraduate classes. And when I thought about what to present or what to share with Danny's friends online or attendees online today, I was thinking of 2 routes. One, maybe a recent presentation on Buddhist psychology and Buddhist-inspired psychotherapy, how to compare the similarities and differences of both. And I gave Denny a second option about pet grief, which is my clinical specialty. And he, without a doubt, without hesitation, he just went pet grief. So I say, okay, this is actually one of my favorite topics. I love animals. Am I a vegetarian yet? No, not yet. But I do have a very, very full heart, sometimes a bigger heart for animals than for human beings. Now, let's begin. Okay, so a little bit about myself. Besides my day job, this is my day job. I am also an avid volunteer. Denny and we talked about this before, how volunteering actually helps help a person keep your usability, your sharpness, your contributions towards your own life and the society. So besides my day job, I also volunteer in giving mental health workshops such as this, mostly in person, but some of them online. So topics can cover anything from, dementia or older adults' mental health, or teaching people how to engage in or lead meditative practices such as meditation. Meditative practices can include meditation. I'm also a proud member of Free Mom Hugs. If you have not heard about them before, it is a group that offers support to youth, especially youth, but anyone who needs support beyond their family if they were to be a member of the LGBTQIA plus communities. And last but not least, I also volunteer for the Basset Hound Rescue of Southern California. In fact, I became a board member just May this year. So I am in charge of their social media. So most of the things that you see on their social media, it's regulated by me. I post them. I respond to people on their comments, and we have a very busy foster-based rescue in Southern California. We have already adopted out more than 2,000 hounds since our inception. We can talk more about those if you're interested to find out about the other hats that I wear. But how and why did I make pet grief my specialty? It's really truly because of my love for animals. And through my clinical practice, I've been practicing since, besides the gap between 2009 and 2019, there's a 10-year gap, which I was a grief counselor by training before, after I finished my master's degree. But after my clinical psychology training, I started practicing from 2019 up until present time. So in my practice and in my interactions with others, I found that not many people appreciate or perceive grieving for their furry ones, the pets, or their family members who have four legs. They don't perceive that as a quote unquote real grief. So the more I lean into it, the more I started accepting clients and treating clients or talking to clients who were grieving for their pets. That really sparked my interest, as in how do we make this an awareness or maybe even a clinical specialty for some of us to help our clients or to help people who are dealing with pet grief. So when I started working on this, say about 3 years ago, pet grief was very new. Nobody knew about the term, as in nobody knew that it was a term. And then after working with a few clients with more research and more work on my own, I presented on processing loss and grief for our loved ones, including our pets. And I presented this in Hawaii last year to fellow clinicians who would like to gain more information and tools in their belt about how to help their clients who are grieving for the loss of their pets. Thank you, Dr. Miu or Denny, for using the point of reference of the recent tragedy in Hong Kong. I follow the news too very much on social media, and like the other example that I was just sharing with Venerable De Hong and Dr. Miu at the beginning of our meeting when you guys haven't joined it, I was talking about this walk for peace led by, I believe, Venerable from Myanmar or Cambodia, I'm not sure, sorry. But they are walking from Texas to Washington, D.C. in about 6 months' time. And what drew me to them was the dog, the precious one that's walking with them. The name is Aloka. You can look him up. So it has stirred or sparked so many feelings in us when we see our loved ones, not just our human companions, but also our four-legged companions. And I'm not just talking about dogs today. You'll hear more from the presentation, which I am kind of borrowing from what I did in Hawaii. So what I did in Hawaii actually was a workshop. As I was saying, I was sharing this with our fellow clinicians, most of them MFT, which is marriage and family therapy clinicians, or other fellow psychologists, to share and learn what grief processing is and what grief processing specifically is when it involves our furry ones, our pets. But before we get into the specialized areas of our furry ones, let's talk about grief processing a little bit. I don't like the idea that it is just in time that we are also being made aware of the typo fires, but what is happening right now there and at any disaster is really grieving. I mean, there's trauma, there's tragedy, there's this disaster, but also we are grieving, whether we are being directly involved or we are vicariously being impacted, or even just witnessing or just reading about them in the news. It creates a feeling of loss. And if you know about grief processing, if you heard about the theories or the process, you would have heard about this name, Kübler-Ross or Kübler-Ross. Her first name was Elizabeth, and she's the one who founded the stages of grief. A lot of memes and sometimes, lighter moments or jokes have been made about, oh, I'm not angry enough, so I'm not grieving, or I'm now in the stage of shopping in my grieving process. So it's pretty well known. What I'm saying is that it's pretty well known now that these 5 stages of grief processing are very acceptable to people who have experienced or witnessed losses, and kind of agree that we do go through those emotions of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, or acceptance. And many times we think that when we are processing grief, it has to happen when we have lost someone permanently. But we now know that grieving can also happen when we are also processing a loss of status, a loss of something that's not here anymore, not necessarily a death of someone. So if you were to apply these 5 stages of grief, you can almost kind of see that it truly illustrates our human emotions when we are processing something that's no longer here with us anymore. Say a job. Let's say my job. And if I were to get fired tomorrow, the first thing that I might experience might be denial. How can this be true? Why am I fired from my job? So that's the denial right there, that you can't believe it and you're trying to deny that it has happened. And usually the second emotion or second wave of emotions would be being angry. Can they do this to me? I have not done anything wrong to them. And you become angry with what's happening. And then maybe there might be some bargaining, as in, tell me, what did I do wrong? Why did you fire me? Maybe I can do something, then perhaps I can get my job back. And if that doesn't happen, then we become depressed. We become not motivated. We become not interested in what's going on in our life. And if we allow our time, if we allow ourselves the time to process, we might eventually get to accepting what's going on and hopefully move on with our life. Now, if you apply this to a cancer diagnosis, if you apply this to losing a house or losing a friend, you can almost see that it applies in almost situation when something is no longer there, when you, as compared to when there were times that you had that possession of that something before, be it a person, not possession of a person, but enjoying the friendship or relationship of the person, or possessing something materialistic, or even a status. So we are essentially afraid of these 3 things: death, separation, or nothing. So in the case of death, it's completely, in a way, permanently gone from this physical world. Separation, like I just mentioned, it could be separation from a job that you used to love, or the health status that you used to have, or a relationship that you used to cherish with a friend. And we are also afraid of nothingness. Now, this is some Buddhist psychology or some kind of philosophy in that. When we are afraid of nothingness, we are possibly pondering, why do we exist? What does life mean? What is this life that I'm living? So that all stems from nothingness or having nothing in your life. Now, coping with death or any loss requires reevaluating or releasing what has existed before while learning to accept what is now. There is this Buddhist view of death and bereavement that facing our fears enriches us, making life more meaningful because it is so short. Appreciating life and accepting its impermanence leads to an intensification of our human experiences. The sky is bluer, food is better, love is deeper, and even death is clearer. Now, I must say this, that about 5 to 10 years ago, if I were to read this paragraph, I may not have as much of an understanding as I do now. I am more engaged in meditative practices these days. I am very exposed to Buddhist psychology since I came to this university. I not only teach it, but I also immerse myself in sharing and learning from my students, my colleagues, and also my colleagues from different departments such as religious studies and chaplaincy. So through my practices, I can truly understand and experience this. When you understand that death is inevitable, it's a very natural part of our life cycle. It's something that everyone is guaranteed to experience. Now, birth is not guaranteed, life is not guaranteed, but death is. So the more I am more accepting of death, the more I am able to embrace that fear and make it meaningful. May I do a little self-disclosure now? I don't know if I did share the last time, but I did have a cancer scare myself in September this year. The good news is I have had a biopsy and the result came back very positive. It was not malignant. But that was the moment that I told myself, I may not have 20 years more ahead of me. I may only have about 5 years. Now, this 5 to 20 years is because of my research. I researched if you had a breast cancer, how many more years would you have? So I thought about the 5 years and 20 years, and I sat and thought to myself, doesn't matter if it's 5 months, 5 weeks, or 5 years, I'm going to live every day like tomorrow is not guaranteed. And I'm not tooting my horn right now just because the diagnosis was positive, but I wasn't afraid. I was telling myself I have lived and I have done all that I can, and I will continue to do for the rest of the life that I'm going to live. Now that I have a positive diagnosis, am I going to change that view? No, I'm still living. Like, I know death is around the corner. It's just that I don't know how much time between now and death, and therefore I'm embracing it more. And true enough, I am enjoying my food more. The sky is bluer. I appreciate every weather that I have, whether it's rainy, it's sunny. I don't like it too cold, but I still appreciate that I am able to be safely waking up every day and going to my own bed, sleeping very safely every night. Now, maybe we can take a little exercise here. This scale doesn't prove that you are this or you are that. Just use these few statements and see kind of where you are at. Now, the scale of 1, 2, 3, 4 to 5, it might add up to something, but this will help you. The statement is actually what we're more focused on. This will help you understand what is your perception of death. Is it only a passage after a death? After your death, you will continue to be, and you'll continue to remember all the experiences of this life? Or is it a definitive, and I cannot pronounce that word. Annihilation is, as in, there's a complete stop right there. After the death, that's it, zero, nothing. And therefore you won't have any experiences. Now, these first two sentences remind me of Dr. Jane Goodall. If you are aware, if you're an animal lover, you would know or have heard about Dr. Jane Goodall, who passed recently about a month and a half ago at 92. She was the scientist, the animal scientist who worked with chimpanzees. And that was her answer basically when she was asked, you're 92 now. Did you think about death? She's like, I don't know if there's anything beyond death. If there is nothing, then there's nothing. But if there is something beyond death from this physical world, then I'm ready for the adventure. So kind of the first two sentences was what she embraced during her living years. But as you read the rest of the statements, death is a radical change, or death is only a passage, how do these statements resonate to you? Kind of gives you an idea of what you think about dying and how you can embrace life that way. But so much so about a little background, a little premise, a little setup for what we're going to talk next. So all of this little speech kind of directs us or direct our thoughts to when we die, what might happen, what is our perception of death, and when someone dies, how may we cope with that? So let's now gather or narrow our perspective to very specifically about our animal companions. I do actually have a small challenge about calling them pets, but for clinical presentation wise, or for the sake of clinical usage, I'm gonna call them pets. I really see them as animal companions. And like I said before, it is not just dogs that could be our animal companions, a bird. If you haven't seen videos of parrots who are very, very intelligent, very, very affectionate, and very, very loyal, you should catch some of them on TikTok or social media. They are really as intelligent as, the next dog or the next cat. Now, if you haven't heard of Bowlby, he was the scientist who founded the attachment theory. If you remember, or if you have seen in some books or materials before, a chimpanzee baby. It was a chimpanzee baby that was used in the lab experiment that was given, two scenarios for them to show which one that they would prefer. So the baby chim went to something that resembled his own mother. And that was part of his findings of his attachment theory, is that when we have the attachment to the caregiver at birth, or when we are neonates, or when we are forming our impressions, that we will be more attached to the person who's caring for us. So continuing bonds, or abbreviated as CB, will maintain this emotional attachment or connection following death, which is an attempt to manage grief. So if we had an emotional attachment to someone, we will try to maintain that emotional attachment because it's painful when you detach it. Imagine a Band-Aid. You had a Band-Aid on your hand and you strip it apart from your hand. There is a pain, whether it's temporary or permanent, there's a pain there. So we try to not sometimes, not remove a Band-Aid and let it come up on its own. Or in this case, we try not to have a forced detachment because it is painful. Grieving the loss of a pet is a deeply personal and complex experience. I don't know how many among us in today's presentation have a pet or more than one pet, or what kind of pets you have, but and also whether you have lost a pet before in your life. You might be able to, if you did, you might be able to relate that how deeply personal and how complex that is to you. I may be talking to you about this right now very clinically, without any emotional attachment or so. But on my drive home, I might be bawling my head off because I just lost my 13-and-a-half-year-old basset hound this February. And the pain while less frequent, is still deep and hurtful whenever I grieve the moments that I no longer have with her. I am very cognizant, I am very aware that, it was a good thing that she left her body that was filling her. And I do have a belief system that I have hopes that she will come back to me as a pet again in the future. But the loss is physical and real and can cause sadness. It's that complex. They are so cherished among our, as a family member. And those of you who have had a pet or who has a pet would know that love is unconditional as compared to our human companion love. Studies have shown that pet grief is destabilizing. 2/3 of one study described the emotions just like losing a child or a baby or a best friend or companion or a loved one, or even sometimes a protector. If you have had an animal who has been fiercely loyal to you and who's very clingy, attached to you, they want to protect that space between you and them, and they will not let another person invade that. So that is why losing a pet sometimes is more painful than losing a human companion or a human person, because they mean so much to us. They have so many different kinds of relationships to us. And at the same time, we not only see them as a friend, as someone we can confide in, but we also see them as someone that we care for. We protect over them. And losing them is like losing a child. I thankfully, knock on wood, have not experienced that pain, but I really do think that losing a child, it's unspeakable. The pain is unspeakable. So losing a pet, if you compare it to it being like losing a child, you can imagine someone who's losing a dog or a cat or a parrot will be experiencing that kind of pain. So pet grief can sometimes be underestimated or misunderstood because they feel like, what is this compared to human loss? I remember one time when I was trying to use animal rescue as an example to show that, rescued animals can actually show so much love back and there is hope in the future. Someone actually, and this is for a domestic shelter event that I wanted to bring up, bring a rescued animal and illustrate that and bring so much hope to people to see that, a rescued animal can also continue to be thriving and to move on from the past. But the response that I got was, how can you compare animal to human? I completely understand. I completely understand that point of view. But I also completely understand that many of us still don't put our lives at the same level. Yeah, we are kind of on the top of the food chain, but as a person who has a belief systems deeply, not just in Buddhism, but also in human rights, I really do feel that all lives are equal per se. Just that it depends on who has more of a power dynamics to control whatever, society, that the societal factors around them. So I feel that an animal's life is just as important as a human's life. So people may feel isolated in their sorrow when the next person to them don't feel that this is just an animal. Why are you grieving like you're grieving for a human? Because the death of the bond of the pet is not always apparent to others. This can add an additional layer of difficulty to the grieving process. So usually it's not finding support from family or friends that leads to this disenfranchisement. I'm sorry, today I'm not able to pronounce some words. Disenfranchisement. So, like for example, I had a client who lost a cat very tragically to a wild animal, I believe. because she never knew, she never found out. She went on vacation. She had a friend who came over to pet sit for her. Her cat was let out around the house, but the friend who babysat or rather house sat for her forgot to make sure that the cat was let in during the night. The cat, sorry, a disclaimer, this might be graphic for you, but the cat was killed by a wild animal, and my client went home and could see the traces of the killing. So even during therapy, during the third or fourth session, she was herself echoing her friend's thoughts and saying, I shouldn't be in therapy anymore. I should get over this by now. Why am I still sad? Why am I still crying? So there is a perception of the society as in, it's just an animal, get over it, move on. But can you imagine if it was your child who was taken away by a wild animal or was harmed by a wild animal? The pain is not different. The pain is the same. So how do we mitigate or manage to cope without grieving or loss of our pet? So it is this connecting bonds that we want to maintain, the emotional connection to the pets that we have lost. So it does not mean that we are only grieving when it's such a tragic loss, like the case that I just mentioned before. For my case, my 13 and a half year old hound, her name is Thunder. I like to use present tense when I introduce her. Her name is Thunder, and I had her, I had a vet come to my house and put her to sleep. So instead of bringing her to the vet, which I knew she would be scared. So when she was about 7 or 8 years old, she started shivering uncontrollably whenever I brought her to the vet, whether it was just for a shot or for a checkup or for a grooming. Sometimes the vet did grooming for her. She would shake uncontrollably. So when I knew that, she was ready to leave us soon, she had cancer. So I researched and found the best way that I could provide her the comfort that she needed. So she didn't have to go to the vet. I had a vet come to my house, and she passed in the bed that she was familiar with. And all my sons came home to be with us, to be with her. They grew up with her. So she was looking around the room to see who was around her. She was slightly demented. She was not able to remember things. She was starting to go in the house, as I have bowel movements in the house. But the worst thing was that her cancer was getting so big. I think it was at least 10 pounds around her body, and she was so skinny, and her spine was really showing through her under the skin. So as much as I wanted to keep her, she was very food motivated. She was hydrated, and she would wag her tail mostly when she saw us. But there was no joy in her eyes, and she was truly suffering from the cancer. So when I finally made the decision, I wanted to make sure that it was a moment that I could live with for the rest of my life, and also for my sons too. We discussed it and we decided on a date, and she passed peacefully and right timely according to what the vet told us. So there wasn't a ritual in this case per se, but I did write an obituary for her, a 2-page long obituary on Facebook, and it detailed from the day she was born until the day she passed, and all the states she had been, and where she turned 4 years old, where she became 7 years old, and so on and so forth. This isn't a ritual per se, but it's something, a ceremonial kind of action that I feel will help me maintain those CBs, the connecting bonds, and maintain my emotional connection to Thunder. So this is just one example. Some other examples would be having a ritual like annually going to your pet's favorite place and have a remembrance recently we had the day of the day. I think it's November 1st or November 2nd, and on campus we put our pets, the pictures of our loved ones who have passed on, and I brought down this picture on that altar for us to, say some words of prayers in different interfaith prayers for us to remember them that way. So that's either a ceremony or a ritual will help us manage our emotional coping through maintaining the the connecting bonds, CBs. Memorials, just like I mentioned. One of the fellow clinicians at the Hawaiian presentation or workshop that I mentioned, that they actually had a pet psychic who came to their house, and they had a moment together. And the pet psychic, after through some connection work, finding out what the pet used to do and all, was able to help her kind of have some moments of feeling the presence of the pet at that session. Dreams, sometimes if we do go to a therapist, or if we do have therapy sessions, we can talk about our dreams of our pets and let them help us process the dreams and learn how that can help lead to maintaining those connection bonds. And with this, we will be able to help the intensity of grief and decrease the feelings of loneliness. And usually when they pass, their absence can lead to a range of emotional responses, of course, such as sadness, anger, guilt, and confusion. If you know me, I like to have a little bit of interaction just to make sure that, I'm not making this too boring. If Dr. Denny and Miu can help me monitor the responses, which demographics do you think are more characteristics of pet grief? In other words, among us, men, women, ethnic groups, which demographics do you think are more susceptible to pet grief, meaning we are more expressive of pet grief?
Okay, so the answer is coming in, but I just wanted to see if I can go back to some of the comments that was made so you get a sense of who's out there. So you're definitely having the right audience. Jennifer mentioned that she had lost her, let me go back, see if I can go back, that she had lost her kitty 2 weeks ago. And that let me see if I can find this following, where she said that her kitty, her companion, was special needs, and the last 6 months of her life, every moment, every action revolved around her well-being. Her well-being. Let me go back. And in the deepest love. Jerry also participated in the discussion. Jerry says, I had 18 ferrets over a dozen years. I actually accidentally, directly killed one, and then it died by a tragic accident in the apartment. Both were so awful, I'm not sure I ever grieved properly. I lock it away, I guess. There are miscellaneous comment. Now come to answering your question. I have two that says women. I have one that says older population. I have one that says woman and child. And then Jennifer follow up and says, my husband is better, taking it better than me. Probably men hide it better than women. I'm not sure we take it better. I don't deal with my emotions that well neither, but I definitely hide it better.
Thank you, Denny.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear Jennifer, right? Jennifer lost a kitty, and Jerry, at least one of his ferrets. Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about the losses. And I did have another client who blamed himself for the death of his pet dog when he wasn't able to rush the dog to the vet in time, he thought, and he has never forgiven himself he didn't forgive himself for the longest time. So it did take a while before we were able to talk about it again. And I'm very glad that he has moved on from that guilt. It is truly complex that, we don't only own the pets, but we do owe them the obligation of taking care of them, because who else do they depend on if we are not the ones to take care of them? And the thing is, I presented this workshop, it's not to alienate people who really love animals and people who don't understand us, but it's to find a middle ground to say that, hey, this is how it feels for us. Maybe, extend a little bit of understanding and give us time to grieve about this very painful loss. And also to kind of mitigate people with the other group, people who don't understand. And I'm not saying that they are less human or they are heartless or cold. They just don't have the same kind of capacity of animal love. Maybe they will have more in the future, but if they don't, that's fine, as long as we have their empathy and their understanding that this is how we are experiencing. Okay, so thank you for those responses. And I don't know if you guessed right. So the demographic, I don't like the word white, but I'm directly borrowing from the research. I say Caucasian American, ages 18 to 35 or 65 and over. I did have a pause of wondering during the workshop. I wonder what happened to people between 36 and 64? They don't grieve as much. I'm thinking, using developmental psychology, at that age group, we are sandwiched. We are very busy with children, or we are very busy with taking care of our parents. So we probably are not expressing, or are busy with our other roles and obligations, and therefore not expressing as much pain and grieving when we lose our pets. Yes, female. A lot of you mentioned that, usually men somewhat take it better. I don't know if you noticed, I said my sons and I were present at my at Thunder's passing. My husband could not do it. He didn't come home for it. He said he would not be able to face it. So it depends on how we express it. So I guess if we do have that kind of animal love, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or woman, we experience the same pain. It's just that the main difference is how we share it with other people.
I think men are in general very afraid of their own emotions. That's why we hide it as a defense mechanism.
Yeah. When you don't show it, you don't know it, or you don't
Yeah,
have to
no,
deal with it.
I absolutely believe in that.
Yeah. I mean, and this is mental health. I used to live in the South. I lived in Mississippi for a few years. And the African American men there even tell me, we don't even go to physical doctors. The doctors that takes care of the doctors that take care of flu and oncology and so on and so forth. Because if we don't deal with it, we don't know it, it's not there for us to manage. Or if we go to doctor, we are not men enough. So I'm sorry, man, we have not, the society has not given you the space to share the emotional piece. You are encouraged, you are allowed, you are definitely deserving to share your emotional space with all of us.
I think it's not biological. It's not genetic. It's just the way we were brought up.
It's the
And
gender roles.
it's a generational thing. I believe the younger male probably don't have that baggage that those of us do.
I'm
Uh,
very happy to share that, yes, the younger generation it's
yeah,
able to emote themselves better than the older generation.
yeah.
The stereotypical gender roles are not as fixed as in the younger generations.
I really like how you say that you don't like the word pet, and you rather like to refer to them as companion in life. I think that is especially true if the animal turned out to be a rescue animal, that
Mhm.
you didn't rescue them to turn them into pets, right? That this
And
is something that happens in life, and and you wanted to reach out and save a life, and
Yeah, I
then
mean,
and they become so much of your life.
as we continue to evolve in our human language, I think it's time we evolve out of pet. I mean, pet has always been a very appropriate term up until, recently. I personally don't use it very much, but like I said, for clinical term, I use it this way. And maybe the cats will tell us who's pet. Maybe you are my pet and I'm not your pet. Cat owners,
That
you might
that's
you
that is
might resonate with that.
that is definitely true with cats. We are their pets. But I think the idea of really treating them as fellow beings and as companions allows us to have that conversation with those who have other priorities and they don't feel as strongly as we do.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I have
so, yeah.
asked people asking me, why do you have to walk your dogs every day? Or why do you have to have that moment, this moment? I said, because it's for their mental health. Believe you me, they have mental health needs too. I'm sure you have heard of dogs who bark nonstop because they are left at the house, 23 hours a day by themselves. They are bored. Of course, they need to do something. And what can they do? They bark, they tear down the house. And cats, there are different species. Felines probably don't need as much attention as canines do. But whatever pet that you or a animal companion that you have, you need to be able to commit to their characteristics. Like for example, fish. If you have one fish only, a small fish tank, it's fine. But if you have 10 fish, a small fish tank will not be considered you taking care of them. It will be, in my eyes, it's animal abuse if you have 10 fish in a small fish bowl. They have no place to go. So I do believe that if you want to take care of an animal, give them as much natural resembling kind of setting according to the animal instinct as you can. I mean, of course, we protect, for me as a dog owner, we protect them from, we have shelter to protect them from the weather and so on and so forth. But I went to the point of creating a doggy door for them to go in and out as and when they like. Before that, I didn't have a doggy door, but for the younger one that I recently adopted, we created a door for him because we feel that they do have as much rights as they should be entitled to.
Yeah,
So,
there, there are two recent comments that I think would add to your discussion about losing a companion, an animal companion, versus losing a family member. So first, I like the idea of elevating them so that they're as much a family member as any other human family member. They're as much as a companion as any other human companion. But given that, it is still unequal because the grief that we have for pet is actually more intense. And I think it goes back to what you said, that is their love is so unconditional. And
and,
that,
and and also it's more than, like, for example, it's more than just your soulmate. It is also like a child that
yeah,
you've been caring for.
yeah,
And I think human naturally, when we look at human developmental psychology or lifespan, usually you die when you grow older. But if someone were to die before you, there is a forced detachment, like I mentioned before, forced
yeah,
detachment, and that's why it's more painful
yeah,
than losing someone who is older than you or has been around longer than you are.
yeah, yeah. Um, so there's a couple of comments. Let me see if I can.
Okay.
Um, Okay, so this comment is less about comparing family member with animal family member, but this one is really about just how a death of a animal companion is so similar to a human companion. And Jennifer says, after caregiving for caretaking for my special needs girl for 6 years, when she left her body, I felt helpless to protect her, but my spiritual practice helped, and the ritual we had brought some peace. I think that's referring to what you did with with your animal companion. Then it gets to the heart about comparing the grief between animal and human. And one student says, in some ways, it was harder than losing my mother or a close friend a year and a half earlier, because she was not in my home with me all the time. So her presence and absence were felt differently. And let's see.
Yeah, it all points to the connecting bonds. It's not the status of the relationship that
Yes,
matters. It's
yes.
connecting bonds.
Another student agree with that, and she said, "I lost my mother too, but it was a torture of a different kind. But losing my kitty was a death of grief that I have never known." So this speaks to what we just discussed about how they are, because they depend on us. We feel okay. So
Yeah, and you also mentioned about the unconditional love. No matter
yes,
how loving our mother is, no matter how loving our brother is, no matter how close your cousin is to you,
yes, yes.
they
So,
are not as unconditional. We all
yes.
have conditions in our human relationships.
Correct. So one student follow up with her earlier comment and says, it's hard to say that because not everyone will understand. And then she said, the love of a pet is uncomplicated by hurts, resentment, ups and downs, and closeness. I think that's a very good one. Okay,
Yeah.
go back.
And seriously, I don't know what to call my thunder because she was my therapist, she was my soulmate, she was my princess, she was my daughter, and she was a lot of things. So I lost a lot of things when I lost her.
Well,
So that's how
you
complex.
lost your thunder.
I lost my thunder.
That's it. Well, I don't think you can find a better name for to represent what she. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
So this is some curious answers to some curious questions. Some people will come to us asking, so how long do you think I will be grieving for my pet? For as long as you want to, for as long as you would, or because grief comes in waves. There's no timeline to it. There's no such thing as in 3 years you'll be okay. I mean, yes, for human bereavement, like when I do grief counseling, usually in about 2 years' time, a client will be able to move on if they were able to overcome these 2 years of grieving, usually very successful in therapy if the grieving was really the bereavement was really how you say, very painful. So but there's no time period per se as in okay, right now it's a 2 years mark, you should move on. But according to what studies have found out, there is a peak period from about 2 to 6 months that you will really experience intense grief, profound grief. And some people for about up to a year, and then maybe it peaks again during anniversary or some place that you've been to before, some things that you've done together before. According to statistics, about 20% reported grief symptoms after a year. I don't think about thunder as much, but I don't know if you can see. She's on my screensaver on my phone. So I see her every day. Every time I pick up my phone, I see her. That's how I remember her. That's how I think about her. But it doesn't mean that you have to do this. But I feel that in a way, philosophically, the loved one, human or animal, has been embedded in your DNA if you have created those connecting bonds. So as you live on, they actually live on with you. So that's one way of thinking and coping or mitigating pet grief. The pet or your companion is no longer there with you physically, but they are forever in your heart and your soul in the physical science way. They are embedded into your DNA. Because if you believe in epigenetics, we evolve, we mutate according to the environment that we live in. So the pet that you have lived together for 6 years, 12 years, 13 years, they are already part of your DNA. So if you live on, they live on with you per se. So, and coming to back to the statistics, this is just an indication for clinicians. Remember, this is a workshop that I presented to clinicians. So they wanted to know about how much time if their client would come to them for grief processing, when would they see the peak symptoms and so on. So these are some statistics to it. So the
There's
distant
one
pressures.
more question that you might not be able to speak to that, depending on. But I believe you have unique experience in this because you have more than one animal companion. And the question is, um, we are talking about human grief when our animal companion pass, but what about animal grief?
Oh,
About grief, how do we help the other animals to deal with because they have grief too.
yes, very much so. So I was very, I was keeping an eye on my younger dog. So Trace came into our life about 3 years ago when Thunder was 10. So I do have a purpose, having two animals at the same time. But I am very aware that, when one of your animals die, if your household has more than one animals, the other one would know. Let them know that their fellow animal has passed on. Don't hide it from them. If possible, let them witness the passing procedure. And it's the same varying degree among humans. Some of us will grieve harder, some of us not. My younger dog, Trace, did not grieve. He missed Thunder initially. Now he's very used to being a single dog. Since February, about 10 months, he's very used. But during the first 2 months, he was looking for her. But according to what I've observed, because I spent a lot of time taking care of him, making sure that he's not grieving, I did not perceive that he was grieving or he was, extra depressed. He was just looking for her. But I do know because I volunteer with the Basset Hound this rescue, and I'm also involved with other rescues. I do have feedback about how one animal would grieve extra hard than another animal in a household. It really depends on their connecting bonds too. And I want to kind of, sidetrack a little bit about this. We always talk about how we humans, we produce the oxytocin when we hug an animal or when we love our animal, or that's how service animal or therapy animals help us cope with our emotions. A lot of us don't know that in return, that animal, especially a canine, I don't know about cats, I'm not as good with cats, but especially a canine, it's also secreting that oxytocin, that neurotransmitter that they will receive themselves. So loving the animals is good for us, and it's good for the animals themselves too. I really can't speak to non-mammals. I believe mammals are able to produce oxytocin. The graphic that you're staring at right now, fish, I don't think they have the same kind of reaction. But one fun fact for you, about 15 years ago, it's been discovered that fish is the number one animal to help children with autism cope with their symptoms. Fish, not a dog, not a cat, but
Yeah,
fish.
that's an interesting point because I believe the bond that we have with our animal companions is not only emotional bond. There's actually a chemical bond. That's
Absolutely.
been proven that that our chemistry changes, and so part of the grief is actually withdrawal.
Yeah. From, not smelling it anymore.
Not
Yeah, I
having it
might
in
be a
a
little
blood,
gross. Yeah.
not having it in a bloodstream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thunder has a special, hounds have a special smell, and Trace never smelled the same, but recently maybe he turned older, he's beginning to smell like Thunder. And I was just telling him the other day, you are beginning to smell like your sister. I speak to him as if his sister is still around, but around spiritually. So that's how I maintain my bonds.
Mm.
Physically, they're no longer with us, but spiritually, she's always with me. So there is an animal hierarchy. I mean, some of you might be wondering why am I talking about fish? Because we do have the hierarchy, as in you're still grieving about your fish. It's not even a dog. Some people do say heartless things like that because they don't know how one can be connected to something that's not something that they relate to. But an animal is an animal, or a bond is a bond. You can be very attached to the fish that you had before. My very first pet actually was not a dog, it was a turtle. I cried. I buried it, and I very dumbly, stupidly, as a 10-year-old girl, went to the grave and dig up the coffin that I put my turtle in and cried again and then put it back. So it depends on the bonds that you have with your animals. It doesn't matter whether it's a fish, it's a donkey, it's, whatever that you have a special relationship with. So I don't know if you have heard about the term. I'm checking the time, it's almost 7. I think after this slide, I'm gonna call it quits, because after that, they are all exercises about using sound bowls and, using imagery guidance and different types of interventions to help process grief in a clinical setting. But this will be my last slide with my presentation today. I learned about this term called kahu. It's a Hawaiian term, and it was so apt that I was in Hawaii presenting this. So we especially grieving because we are supposed to be the attendant, the guardian, the nurse, the keeper of our furry companions, our animal companions. So when needed, feel free to see a pet psychic. There were a few clinicians in the room. They're all clinicians. They had seen pet psychics themselves, and some of them actually shared very good experience. One or two said they were like, they're not sure about it. But 5 or 6 of them, they swore by it. They would recommend the clients if the clients wanted to see a pet psychic. What does a pet psychic do? The pet psychic is acting as a medium to let you know where your pet and how your pet is doing right now. Personally, I don't subscribe to that, but I am, because I'm a scientist by training, but I am very open-minded. I don't know what's out there in the universe. We only know about 4% of what's out there. So maybe there's a way, and if there's a ritual or a ceremony that can help you cope with it, I say go for it. Go for it. And people who believe in the afterlife, also known as Buddhists, actually have stronger attachment but improved grief response to the loss of a pet. The other examples that I was just mentioning about a dog's life, I don't know if you watched that. Don't watch Hachi. It will make you cry. But a dog's life, I only watch animals when the dog doesn't die in I only watch movies when the dogs don't die in the movies. In any case, a dog's life was joyful for me to watch because the dog kept coming back, kept reincarnating, and that reinforces my fantasy, my idea, as in, when my dog passes, my dog will come back and see me again in another dog's body in the future. But in any case, most beliefs, rituals, ceremonies, and practices, these are all helping us to maintain the connecting bonds. And depending on how strong your bonds are, you may use more than one strategy to manage your pet grief. Last but not least, I would say, if you need to speak to a therapist, feel free. There are all of us out there, especially those who specialize in pet grief. There are more now. When I first started, I was the only name that I can find who specialized in pet grief, but there are not more people now who would actually mention pet grief in their specialty care. Don't feel shy or feel that, oh, this is nothing. If you think that the grief or the bereavement or the over prolonged bereavement, or even when your pet has just left you, you feel that you need someone to talk to and there's no one around you to support you, feel free to see a professional to help process that. All right, like I said, I will end after this slide. I actually have like maybe 5 or 6 more slides on this, but I would like to give the mic back to Denny and see where you would like to take us from here.
Can I add something?
Sure.
I happen to counsel someone, even though I'm not a psychologist. Someone in Cleveland, he's in his 30s, late 30s. He called me one day when it was at Starbucks between, visiting the prison, the women's prison, and he said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he has this cat that was ill, and it was the second time, and he was crying that why did this happen to him? I wasn't sure what to say, but I tried to explained to him that there are a lot of folks out there who have pets, and their pets die. Their pets have all kinds of illnesses, you know. So don't feel alone that you are the only person, because he felt that he was the only person. Why did this happen to me? You know, because I do have a friend who has the first dog coming out of prison. His dog bits a neighbor's dog, so they put that dog to sleep, and then he get the second one, and after a couple of years, that another dog had cancer and died. So you know, so I relate the message to him. So it did help him to ease his anxiety and fear and suffering, right? That it didn't just happen to him, it happened to a lot of people. That's the first thing. Second, I have a lady friend. She's up in San Francisco. She has her pet, her dog, and then her dog died, and then boom, she went into depression. She was put on medication. And then a couple of months ago, she has another pet dog. She was off medication. So we cannot overlook or criticize people that they go into depression because they are grieving. We who are we to judge? That is my point. And then lastly, at Anwood Prison, they have a dog program where the incarcerated individual, they train these traumatized dogs, and these are the most traumatized dogs that you could ever see. And they did not like to be touched, this and that. But guess what? When they went and came to my meditation group, we got almost 2 hours. The dog, two different dogs now. The dog sat still in silence and meditating with us. But when he brought the dog to other groups, the dogs have to get out of the room. But when the dogs came into my meditation visit, during my meditation visit, they lay down the whole time. Just, you know, so I just want you guys to know that, hey, meditation works. The dogs could feel it.
Both of my house meditate with me. Thunder meditated with me, and Trace meditates with me all the time.
Yeah.
Whenever I go sit in my swing, he knows his meditation time. He doesn't do anything, he just sits there with me.
Yeah, they know because they could sense the energy, and actually those dogs let me pet them as well. So just so you know. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe, and also I really do believe that they can smell our emotions, that we only have this percentage of use of our smell, the sense, our sensation of smell. But dogs have a million more uses of their sensation of smell. So we can feel, we can observe emotion, but they can smell emotion. So if you are fearful, they can smell it. If you are going to hurt them, they can smell it. So if you're kind, they can also smell it.
They have supernatural power. Okay, go ahead, Danny.
There are a couple of comments that I think I like to share. So one of the comment has to do with helping other animals to grieve. And Jennifer says, I keep explaining to my surviving kitty that Heather left her body. I try to give him extra love and activities, but he is so clingy. So I end up doing all my big cries in the car because the first time he saw me cry, he threw up. So that's one way of making attempt and how that didn't work. Anyway, another comment says that has to do with has to do with fish. So fish have personality too. Many people don't understand that. That's especially to do with carp. You know, the Japanese carp. They believe that they have mythical. Let me see. This is about how we could do things, physical things to help grieving. So I knew I would miss her scent, so I kept her blankets around, and I smelled them as long as like that. And I keep them in closed bags. We do that with humans too. Sometimes I heard that. Yeah. And then sleeping with her favorite stuffed animal also comforts me. I want to speak about you mentioned a few times about how the Buddhists deal with the grief, and you mentioned something about afterlife. Now I'm speaking in front of a monk, so I'm sure if I speak wrong, he will reach out to the screen and hit me on my head. I try to understand this whole idea of afterlife, and I think the best way I can think of it is from thinking about Stephen Hawking. So now Stephen Hawking never received a Nobel Prize for his contribution because first of all, he died young, but also because his major contribution, his main contribution has not been proven yet. And that's one of the requirements for a Nobel Prize. And what he does, what he talks about is that our existence can be in terms of matter, what we call physical existence, and it can be in terms of energy. And so when a particle enters what we want to call a black hole, which is an unfortunate name for a realm where our physical existence or our energy existence can commingle. But in any case, he said that it doesn't make logical sense that if two persons enter a black hole, then they become indistinguishable. I mean, if Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock both enter in black holes, something must be different with the energy, right? So he postulates that there is a third element that he, for the lack of a better name, he called information. So he believes that when two particles enters a black hole, it's the energy and the matter that remains in a black hole, but something escaped, which is the information. And so this is now called the Hawkins radiation, and this hasn't been proven yet. Now, I think that is very close to the Buddhist idea. Not so much afterlife. Afterlife had this idea that, well, when I die, I left my body, and then, I wanders around until I find a different body. The Buddhist doesn't actually think of that. They think of what is left as karma, which is information. It's not a life form. It's not even energy. It's something beyond a particle or a wave, and it's closest thing would be what Stephen Hawking said, information, and it's that information that later on becomes the building block for a new life. So now I have very little experience with pet grief. My son had a rescue dog who was very old when he got it, but every day that he nursed Buddy became young. He just gets younger once he received not just the nutrition but the love. And so I know that when Buddy left, my son was very difficult for him. So, but it wasn't my direct experience, right? So, but on the other hand, saying that they're not pets, but they're more just a family member of animal companions. I think losing a family member, an actual family member, like my father, like our parents, there is some similarity. And so the question is, even though I don't have any direct experience with dealing with grief of a animal family member, how did I deal with it as a Buddhist, right? So I think we often mistaken or we commingle grief with memory. That we believe that by giving up a grief or dealing a grief that we necessarily diminish our memory. I think one needs to separate those two. That we want to keep our memory forever. But the question then is that, so what's the purpose of dealing with grief other than our physical health, right? Because grief is not good for us. My approach is that my father passed away. He left his body, just like Jennifer said. And I don't know where he is, but his information stayed behind, and he would become in a life form in no time. And so I want to continue to give him positive energy. And so I manage my grief for the purpose of giving him positive energy. This is what I can do to someone who given me so much while he was alive. So that just to say how
Thank you. This is something new to me. I'm so glad that you are sharing this with me. So I learned something new today. Although we do talk about similar concepts like this in our Buddhist psychology class in my MFT program. And many of my students are not Buddhist, so they also bring in scientific contributions about how we view consciousness. So the term that you said, information, is similar to how we discuss consciousness in the
Correct.
Buddhist psychology class.
Correct.
So it's
Correct.
different from just energy, but if you were to perceive it as, our human body is like radio, transmitter radio that receives wavelengths in the air, and this information, this energy, this consciousness will be readable when a machine is able to read it. So there's so, like I say, there's so much out there that we haven't even explored or understood yet. But the idea of what you just said, that you are contributing to that information, positive energy to that information, it's really good, refreshing for me to hear and understand. And I
So,
appreciate
so
that.
Jennifer comment and says exactly, Denny. That's how her ritual helped us. Two, we celebrate her life and send her off happy so that she won't be too attached to this world, worry about us. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I mean, think of your animal companion. They're angels. They're truly angels. They appear in our life as much as angel would appear in our life. And so when you grieve, don't think that by dealing with your grief that you're losing memory of them, but rather saying that if I deal my grief, then I have some bandwidth left to, have more positive energy. And I want to give that positive energy to her or him so that in their next incarnation, they would be a better angel.
Well, thank you. And to add to the notion of what you and Jennifer just said, and the last thing from me today was that there's a common saying, I didn't invent this phrase. Grief is love having no place to go. Grief is love having no place to go. So if you are able to redirect your love to a new place, you will be not grieving, but remembering what has happened before.
That is such a great comment. So going back, we started this by talking about this crazy disaster and fire that happened in Hong Kong. And so a lot of people are grieving, not because they lost a family member, but they're grieving for incompetent government, and they don't quite know how to deal with that grief. They cannot turn it into anger because, the government is such a way that if you turn it into anger, it's actually whatever, it's politics. They don't want you to go out in the street and protest. That's not what they want.
You can't.
So then it's like you're artificially bottling up that grief, and so a lot of people want to help. A lot of people want to donate money. A lot of people want to donate material. Now, when you have a disaster, donating material is fine for the first 24 hours or whatever. But after that, it just gets harder to deal with all that material. And so people who deal with disasters, they will always tell you, donate money, donate money. That is the easiest for us to actually distribute it. So the question then is, where do you put the money? Where does it go? So someone come up and says, if you give it to this and give it to that, only 20% of it goes to the actual person who needs it. But then they point out that there is a charity, and in Hong Kong that has been around for a couple of centuries, and they start out by just giving people free burial. That was back then. That was a big thing. I mean, people cannot afford their own burial. But now they become very efficient, and turns out that they take zero administration fee. And so people say, "Wow, let's donate to that." But the question is, how are they going to direct that to the actual people who are suffering? Even though they will, but it's very difficult for them to take the money and says, "Well, it will only go to this because they deserve it." No, these guys we don't deserve it. They can't. So then someone said, "Well, just like you said, but you said it better, which is grief is love with no place to go." And so take this opportunity to just say, express your love and just give it to some agency that you believe can manage that money, and let them do what they do, because then it's just an outlet for love, you know, which is probably what the person who passed away wants you to do anyway. You know, so that, I like that comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Well, I hope the presentation today is appropriate and moments worthwhile to share with all of you. Thank you for having me again, Denny and Venerable De Hong. Maybe the next time I come by would be next quarter, right? March.
Yeah. March.
I was going to ask you. I was afraid that you're so busy.
At this moment, March is doable. At this moment.
Let's do March. Let's do March. So in the meantime, maybe the students out there can comment on our circle on over time, not necessarily right away, but what topics you want Dr. Kwok to cover in March, right?
And feel free to reach out on me to me on LinkedIn or my US email address if you want to give it to them. I'll be happy
Okay.
to oblige.
Okay, now someone actually make a donation. I'm not going to tell you how much, but I just want you to know that that donation will not come to you. That donation, we all work for Venerable De Hong right now, okay?
Doesn't matter. Give
yeah.
it to the world and you will receive it from the world.
That's correct. Okay, so let me turn off the outside.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Oh, hang on.